The small town of Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, sat nestled between rolling hills and quiet streams, its streets lined with weathered homes and leafless trees. Inside Willow Creek Middle School, a classroom stood eerily silent. The desk where Sarah Whitaker once graded papers was bare. The whiteboard still bore faint traces of her last lesson, equations scribbled in her neat handwriting, and the air felt heavy with absence. Sarah, a 32-year-old math teacher, had been fired. Her offense? Publicly supporting Donald Trump. For 5 years, she'd been a fixture in this tight-knit community, her classroom a haven where students learned not just numbers, but resilience. Now, that was all gone, stripped away by a single social media post. I support Trump because he fights for what he believes in, and so should we. Sarah had always been a quiet force. With her long brown hair often tied back in a loose ponytail and her warm hazel eyes, she carried a gentle strength that drew people in. She wasn't loud or confrontational, but she was honest, sometimes to a fault. That honesty had cost her everything. The post, shared on her personal X account after a long day of teaching, wasn't meant to stir trouble. It was just Sarah being Sarah, unafraid to say what she thought. But in Willow Creek, where opinions were expected to stay neatly tucked away, it was a spark that ignited a firestorm. The backlash came swiftly. By the next morning, whispers had turned into a roar. Parents forwarded the post to each other in outraged group chats. Teachers huddled in the break room, exchanging uneasy glances. Sarah was summoned to the principal's office before the first bell. Mrs. Carter, a wiry woman with graying hair and a perpetually pinched expression, sat behind her desk, clutching a printout of Sarah's words like it was evidence of a crime. "Sarah," she began, her tone icy, "this doesn't align with our school's values. We've had complaints, dozens of them. Parents are worried about the influence you're having on their kids." Sarah's stomach dropped. Influence? It was my personal account. I've never brought politics into my classroom. Mrs. Carter's lips thinned. "That doesn't matter. The board's decided. You're terminated, effective immediately." Sarah walked out of the office in a daze, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. She gathered her things, a photo of her students from last year's math fair, a stack of worksheets, a coffee mug that read, "World's Okayest Teacher," and left without a word. In her car, she gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened, tears spilling down her cheeks. She'd spent years building something meaningful here. She thought of Tommy, the shy 7th grader who'd finally mastered fractions under her guidance, and Emma, who'd once slipped a note under her door saying, "You make math fun." Now they'd wonder where she'd gone. Word of her firing spread through Willow Creek like a cold wind. Some parents cheered the decision, calling her a radical, unfit to teach. Others, including a few who'd always admired her dedication, stayed silent, afraid to rock the boat. Her students, though, didn't hold back. A group of 8th graders, led by a fiery girl named Mia, staged a small protest outside the school, holding signs that read, "Bring back Miss Whitaker." The principal dispersed them quickly, but the gesture lingered in Sarah's mind when she heard about it from a friend. At home, she shut herself in, avoiding the pitying looks of neighbors. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, texts from colleagues, calls from her parents, but she let them pile up unanswered. That night, over a tense dinner with her family, the silence broke. Her father, a retired mechanic, with a gruff voice softened by age, set his fork down. Why'd you have to post that, Sarah? Why risk everything for some politician? Her mother, a soft-spoken woman who'd taught Sarah to knit, nodded in agreement. Sarah took a deep breath, her voice steady, despite the lump in her throat. It's not about him, Dad. It's about me. About being free to say what I think without losing my whole life over it. Isn't that what you taught me? To stand up? Her father's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Her mother reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. We're just worried, honey. Days bled into weeks. Sarah wrestled with despair, but a flicker of defiance kept her going. One evening, sitting on her worn couch with a cup of tea, gone cold, she opened her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keys before typing, "Fired for supporting Trump. I won't be silenced." She hit post and watched the screen light up with reactions. Thousands liked it. Hundreds commented, some with encouragement, others with venom. One reply caught her eye. "Trump should hear about this. He'd fight for you." Sarah stared at it, a wry smile tugging at her lips. "Yeah, right," she muttered. But the thought planted a seed. Far from Pennsylvania, Donald Trump was on the move. He'd taken a break from his usual routine, traveling to a golf resort in the Midwest for a few days of relaxation with old friends. The sun was setting over the rolling green fairways as he sat with a small group, sipping Diet Coke and trading stories. One of his buddies, a burly man named Jack, who'd known Trump since the 80s, leaned across the table. "Hey, Don, you hear about that teacher in Pennsylvania? Got sacked just for saying she supports you." Trump's eyebrows shot up, his glass pausing midair. "No kidding? What's her name?" Jack grinned, pulling out his phone. "Sarah Whitaker. Here's her post." Trump skimmed it, his eyes narrowing. "She's got guts. I like that. What's the story?" Jack laid it out. Small-town teacher, beloved by her kids, canned for one tweet. Trump leaned back, tapping his fingers on the table. "They fired her for that? That's not right. That's not America." He turned to his assistant, a sharp young woman named Claire, who'd been taking notes nearby. "Get me everything on her, her record, the school, all of it. I want to talk to her." Claire nodded, already pulling up files on her tablet. By the next morning, Trump had a dossier. Sarah's glowing evaluations, her termination letter, and a photo of her smiling with her students at a math competition. That afternoon, Sarah was in her kitchen, scrubbing a pot with more force than necessary, when her phone rang. She wiped her hands on a towel and glanced at the screen. Unknown number. "Probably a scam," she muttered, but answered anyway. "Hello?" A booming voice filled the line. "Sarah? Donald Trump here. I heard what happened to you." The pot slipped from her hands, clattering into the sink. "Mr. Trump? Is this a joke?" He laughed, a hearty sound that echoed through the phone. "No joke. I'm on a trip, and a friend told me your story. You're a fighter. I respect that. Tell me what went down." Sarah's heart pounded as she recounted it all. The post, the meeting, the abrupt end to her career. Her voice wavered at first, then steadied. "I just wanted to be honest. I didn't expect this." Trump grunted in agreement. "You shouldn't have to. You're a teacher, not a punching bag. They've got no business firing you for speaking your mind. Don't worry, I'm gonna fix this." Sarah blinked, clutching the phone tighter. "Fix it? How?" Trump's tone was pure confidence. "Trust me, we'll get you back in that classroom. You're too good to lose." True to his word, Trump acted fast. That night, from his hotel suite, he posted online, Sarah Whitaker, great teacher, fired for supporting me. Wrong. We're bringing her back. Freedom matters. The message exploded, racking up millions of views. News crews descended on Willow Creek, cameras flashing outside the school. Parents who'd stayed quiet before started calling the district, demanding answers. Mia and her classmates handed out flyers in the town square, their youthful defiance catching the eye of reporters. The school board, overwhelmed by the spotlight, huddled in emergency meetings. A week later, Sarah's phone pinged with an email. The subject, reinstatement. Her hands shook as she read it. After review, we're reinstating you as a teacher, effective immediately. We regret any distress caused. She sank onto her couch, tears streaming down her face. She was going back. Her mother, sitting nearby, pulled her into a hug. "You did it," she whispered. Sarah shook her head. "He did it." Trump wasn't finished. During a stop on his trip, he invited Sarah to a meet and greet with supporters. She arrived in a simple blue dress, her nerves buzzing as she stepped into the crowded room. Trump spotted her and waved her on stage. "This is Sarah Whitaker," he declared, his arm around her shoulders. "A fantastic teacher who got fired for speaking her mind. Now she's back, because we don't let good people get crushed." The crowd erupted, their cheers washing over her. Sarah took the mic, her voice trembling but clear. "Thank you, Mr. Trump. You gave me my life back." Back in Willow Creek, Sarah walked into her classroom to find her students waiting with handmade signs. "Welcome back, Ms. Whitaker." Tommy rushed forward, grinning. "We knew you'd come back." She smiled, stepping to the whiteboard. "Today," she said, "we're talking about standing tall." Trump's final post came that night. "Sarah's back where she belongs, teaching America's kids. That's how we keep this country great." Sarah wasn't just a teacher anymore. She was a testament to unyielding spirit.